Welcome to Tales from the Streets. Here's what our narrator has to say. On the day I was kidnapped, the 22nd of November 2021, I was heading home by road for the holidays from school. I schooled at the Federal University of Technology in Katsina State and was heading home to Minna, Niger State for my holidays. Now, I am the type of person who sleeps in a moving vehicle, but that day, I couldn't sleep. I had earlier been conversing with another passenger about the danger of the road we were traveling because you see, our driver kept stopping on the road to drop passengers and I was anxious. The attack came at exactly 3 o'clock. I knew because I had just spoken to my mom on the phone, telling her where we had reached. As soon as I turned off the phone, I saw it reflect 3 p.m. on the screen and immediately heard gunshots. We were on that Regina Road in Kaduna State. The driver was confused because gunshots came from virtually everywhere. We, the passengers, were screaming, scared, confused because we didn't know where the gunshots were coming from and we didn't want to be caught in it. At this time, our 18-passenger bus had only 3 passengers left. Myself, my friend from school, and the other young lady, all female, as some had dropped along the way. The driver stopped on the road and fled. Several other vehicles caught in that gunfire too had stopped, and I saw many people running into the bush opposite. My friend and I and the lady were left paralyzed with fear in the bus. We couldn't even open the door of the bus. We just sat there in fear until one of the kidnappers opened the bus for us and ordered us out into the bush along with several other road users that had been caught. When we began our trek into the bush, I counted about 20 victims. We may have been more, but we were about 20-something. They marched us a short distance and stopped to add a few more victims they had kept the day before. Yes, they had kidnapped the day before, and they put those victims on hold. Because I also heard them talking about the victims they had kept on hold the previous day's raid, which was on the 21st of November 2021. I couldn't tell how many we were in all, but we ranged from 30-something upwards. They took our names, asked us if we had people in the military, took the numbers of people we wanted them to call for our ransom, and questioned us on the nature of our family, who had money, who worked where, that sort of thing. Because they had taken our bags, our wallets, phones, and other personal items, they told us to be truthful, that if they found out we lied, they would kill us immediately. I gave a false name. I gave a false identity, and I'll tell you why. But first, we trekked for 2 days without shoes, without food, and around evening time, they asked us to sleep wherever we could. And if we came by a river, they told us to drink from the river. The following morning, before daybreak, they woke us to continue trekking. You can imagine trekking on barefoot in a hot and dusty terrain with barks, stones, all kinds of things that make walking difficult. We were tired, and there were a few elderly among us. After about the 3rd day or so, some were too weak to continue the trek, even though that was when they began to give us food. The kidnappers got some of the villagers in the area we were forced to trek to carry the weak in their makeshift rickshaw, the types farmers use to move coal or farm produce from place to place. So these rickshaws were used to carry some of us. I was among those lifted in it. I was exhausted, famished, and had double vision by the 3rd day. The kidnappers warned the people carrying us not to follow paths where they would encounter military checks, or they would kill the people and go back to destroy their villages. So you see, these villagers are not complicit. They are also victims. They complied. They looked at us with pity. They were as much victims as we were. We weren't even allowed to talk among ourselves. They expressly forbade the use of English as means of communication. This, I think, is because they didn't speak nor understood it Even if we spoke in Hausa, they beat us. They would warn us to stop communication. But they would beat us even more if they heard us speaking English. In fact, we were beaten daily for good behavior. They woke us up and beat us with sticks, and the men with cutlass, just to show they were in charge, to instill fear in us and discourage any form of disobedience. There were one or two people who had families in the military that got more beaten than the rest of us. Like one man who was beaten with a machete or chains every day. I think the man was in the military. They saw his ID card. They beat this man. You would feel sorry for him. They beat him every day. Now, when I gave a false identity, it was as much to protect me as well as my family. I lied that my father was dead, and that my uncle was responsible for my education, and that he was even sick at that time. My mom, I said, is a widow who didn't even have a job. They asked me why I was going to school instead of being married. In fact, they told all the women that they would take us to Zamfara State to meet their leader and marry us off to their men. They switched between Hausa to speak to us and Fulfulde to speak among themselves. I was able to pick a few words because my family had lived with Fulani neighbors when I was much younger. We lived with Fulani neighbors for about 8 years, so I knew a few words and could guess a few meanings to what they were saying. I had no doubt in my mind that these men meant business. They will kill us at will. Now, they noticed I reacted to some of their expressions and insisted I was Fulani, telling me that they knew I was pretending and they would marry me off. I insisted I wasn't Fulani. I replied only in Hausa. I told them I was the daughter of a widow who had many children to care for. I hoped the ransom demanded from my mother wouldn't be too much, like that of the military man they kept beating every day with cutlass. His ransom was so much that even when it was paid, they still didn't release him. But I will talk about that later. After 4 or 5 days, they separated us from the men. They said they would kill the men and marry the women off. This time, I also realized they had spoken to our people and agreed ransoms for each of us. They left us women in the hands of another set of their people, who they referred to as security. Now, none of our kidnappers spoke English, except one young boy among them. He was in his early 20s. He was instrumental to many of us being kept safe and alive. Now, the majority of us were students, so English was what we used to communicate. We were very careful too. Let me talk about the boy who spoke English among the kidnappers. He told us he realized he made a mistake joining Boko Haram. He told us he didn't like the fact that they killed people, raided villages, and robbed. He said he was looking for a way to leave the group. This young man, I was later to find out, also helped my mom. He secretly called her to tell her not to bring the ransom demanded because there were talks among his people to also kidnap my mom when she came to drop the ransom. So my mother kept stalling every time they called for the money. She told them the money wasn't complete and that she was still looking for more money. They told her to bring what she had, but she said she hadn't got the machine. Now, that machine is the most important item they want. The young man was also instrumental in helping one of the victims escape. The military guy I told you about. Here's the story. So the young man secretly told the military guy how to fool the security guards holding us and then run. Unfortunately, after a few days, the escapee was caught. He ran right into the house of the big boss of the gang. They call him Kachala. Can you imagine? They brought him back to where they camped the rest of us and flogged him so badly. We began to pray for death for the man. It will forever remain in my mind the way the man was broken and beaten with blood everywhere. The man was beaten to confess that it was the young man who taught him the escape route, but he must have been confused, which is why he was caught. Now that young man ran away before I left the kidnappers' den. After the escapee incident, I think he knew the kidnappers would kill him. and they meant to kill him. I spent close to 2 months in the kidnappers' den before I was released. My mom was asked to pay 1 million naira in cash, plus crates of beer and one Honda machine. The Honda machine is a preferred item because the machine can climb rocks and mountains. It is called Kickstarter, and so common a demand for ransom by Boko Haram. In Kaduna State, in fact, the governor, Dr. El-Rufai, ordered that anyone found with that machine should be killed. The machine has been banned in many northern states to discourage Boko Haram from demanding it as part of ransom. My mother had to travel to Kano to buy it, and at the time she went, it was just one of two left in the entire factory that had been shut down because it had been banned up north. But even at that, the packaging was changed to deceive officials as she brought it from Kaduna to Kano. Remember I said it had been banned. After my ransom was paid, they stopped coming to us because they had to go and get more people to kidnap. We were left with the security men. They were the ones that wanted to rape us. But Kachala, their leader, had told us to report any of his security men who even as much as make any attempt to rape us. He was very serious about this as he made the warning in the presence of the security men. You see, it was not love for us that made him say this. The young man I told you about that was helping us was the one who explained the reason to us. He said the Malam helping the kidnappers make charms to ensure compliance to ransom and raids that the military will not interrupt had told them that raping victims will spoil their chances of getting their ransom. So you see, it's business. They want to ensure nothing destroys their business, that they don't get caught by the military or killed by government. So they say, don't rape the victims. They need the money. So you see, it's a business. But I thank Allah that these kidnappers didn't rape us. I thank Allah the set of kidnappers we met were the kind types. Oh yes, they beat us daily. But you see, it is a business. Others kill their victims at will and rape the women. According to them, the kidnappers, they said that if government is ready to settle with them, they are ready. If not, they will continue kidnapping until day of judgment. They said the government had taken their land and killed their families, and so they won't stop their business, but will continue with it forever. Well, eventually, when my mother got all they demanded for, the 1 million naira in cash, the Honda machine, the crates of beer, and I had spent 7 weeks in captivity, my mother had to spend another 20,000 naira to bribe an old man to take my ransom to the kidnappers. Since she had been warned not to come herself, my mother approached some men within the community. The kidnappers demanded the ransom be dropped, but they all refused, saying that they could also be kidnapped because it had happened many times before. So it was an elderly man who himself had fled from Zamfara state after kidnappers raided his village and killed his family. This man offered to go, saying that even if they kidnapped him, there will be no ransom, and if they killed him, he had nothing to lose. All his family were dead anyway. The kidnappers, who by the way also wore masks or handkerchiefs to cover their faces, accepted the ransom. When I was about to be released, they asked me what I would do. I said, I will go and continue my education. My fellow victims were shocked. The kidnappers themselves were shocked. One of them said, so, after all these things that has happened to you, you still want to continue school? That means we will continue to jam. Meaning they would likely capture me again. To be honest, I don't even know why I said that to them. I just knew I had to finish school. I believe it's Allah that destined this to happen to me. I know that inshallah, I will complete my education, maybe not in Katsina, maybe in a university close to home. But I am still traumatized by my abduction. However, school is uppermost on my mind. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.